All right. So, looking here, which statement is true about a chemical reaction? So we've got D. All of the atoms in the reaction or reactants will be a part of the product, and that is true. So again, that's part of the law of conservation of mass. Remember, what we start with is what we have to end with as far as our number of atoms. So that is what that statement is telling you. So the number of atoms that you start with in the reactant is the same number in the product. So A says the physical states of the atoms in the reactants determine the products. That's not true. Some of the atoms in the reactants will be a part of the products. Again, not just some of them, all of them. C says the number of atoms in the reactants determines the product. Again, the number of atoms does not determine the product. So that is not true either. 24. Which are most responsible for creating acid rain pollution? And we've got coal burning power plants. Remember, some of the acid rain is caused by the burning of fossil fuels combined with rain, and that's what creates the majority of acid rain. So this table shows the estimated energy production from fossil fuels over a 20-year period. What conclusion is best supported by the data? So we look at the table, we've got coal, oil, and natural gas starting at the year 1999 to 2009 to then 2019. And we see here at each one of those, coal, oil, and natural gas, it continues to increase in every decade, right? So that's telling us that we're using more and more of those products. So A is our answer there. Dependency on oil has increased. Therefore, energy production from oil is increasing, and that is all true. So, which best explains why all of the Earth's fresh water is not available for human use? And that's because most of Earth's fresh water is frozen water. Remember that. Think back to when we talk about icebergs and glaciers and things like that. That's the majority of Earth's fresh water is in its frozen state. Now, of course, we have rivers and lakes and things like that. However, the majority of fresh water, which again, only 3% of Earth's water is fresh water, of that 3%, the majority of it is actually frozen, not available for us to have quick access to. All right. So here, how can upwellings improve fishing for ocean fishermen? Remember, when we talk about upwelling, we talk about the mixing of the water. We talk about the fact that the water is going to be kind of mixed from below. So the cold bottom layers of the water are going to be brought from the lower portion of the ocean, and it's going to be brought closer to the surface. So it's going to be breaking up that cold, nutrient dense water and all the nutrients with it closer to the surface. And so when that happens, it's breaking nutrients with it, which is, of course, good for the fish and other wildlife there. So, C, they bring nutrients from the cold, deep ocean waters. So, if a lake has excess levels of phosphates and nitrates in its water, what will most likely result? Again, these things are things that you're going to find in pesticides and things like that that farmers might use on plants. But when they get into standing water, they cause an overgrowth of algae. And so you get the algae blooms and things like that. So D is what that one is. 29, which is the most accurate method scientists use to predict the age of Earth, and that would be radioactive dating of rocks. So remember, that's when you're using things like the half life. You're looking at uranium, you're looking at the half life of rocks, and so that's the most accurate. Now, relative dating could also be used, but that's not nearly as accurate. So, the best reason for scientists to study ice cores obtained from Earth's ice caps. And so, again, think about them kind of like the rings of a tree, right? They tell a history, they tell what was happening on Earth at any given point in time. So, D, to study past climates by analyzing trapped gases and particles. So, they kind of paint a picture of what was happening in the Earth, on the Earth, and the Earth's atmosphere at any given point in time. So, what is most likely the result of overusing a particular antibiotic? And this is B, more infections caused by bacteria resistant to the antibiotic. Again, when you overuse the antibiotic, you make it so that that antibiotic becomes less effective because bacteria begin to mutate and become resistant to that bacteria, so that when you go to use it again, it's no longer effective against that particular strand of bacteria. Which illness can most often be treated with antibiotics? Well, of course, it have to be something that is bacteria based. So the cold, The flu are both virus based, and diabetes is not a virus or a bacteria, so that couldn't be treated with it. So strep throat is the only one there that could be caused by a bacteria. So strep throat is our answer there. So, how can biotechnology help farmers overcome sudden changes in the global climate? Well, we're going to be looking for here something that's going to help the plants not be affected when the weather changes. And the one that is going to be the only one that looks like something dealing with weather would be B and D. D says by only planting crops in the winter. Well, that deals with weather, but that's not helping the plants change when the weather happens or helping the plants deal with anything when the weather is not in a particular season. So B would be the best answer. By developing crops that are resistant to adverse weather, that would be the best one there. So 34, how has biotechnology helped to improve the agricultural industry? And B, by creating some crops that are resistant to certain insects. And that's definitely very helpful. Um, 35, the table shows the food choices from two species of birds, and one eating small seeds, flying insects, the other one eating large berries and beetles. Which will most likely happen to queasers as a result of woodpeckers migrating to their habitat? Well, they're neither one of them are eating the same thing, so they should be able to coexist pretty easily. So D, the two species will coexist with no competition because again, the only time they would have to compete is if they were using the same resource. And since they're eating different foods, they do not have to compete, so they can coexist. All right, so what happens to most of the energy as it moves through a food web? And again, it is changed into heat energy. So whether that heat energy is being used through the animal moving or through production of waste products, what have you, but it's changed into heat energy is the best answer there, which is the best evidence for evolution. And so again, evolution talking about things changing over time. And so we've got here old rock layers containing fossils, unlike existing organisms. So being able to look at things and say, hey, this doesn't look like anything that is currently around. So this must be something that, was around a long time ago. And 38, which best explains why mammals became dominant after the mass extinction of the dinosaurs and they had traits that helped them adapt to environmental changes, is definitely an answer. Now, the other ones, they were longer than dinosaurs and ate different foods. No, they lived in different areas on Earth than dinosaurs. No, they were able to hibernate for thousands of years. Definitely not. So, definitely that first answer there. So, which demonstrates how genetic variation may result from a change in the environment where an animal lives. So, again, when we talk about genetic variation, we talk about a change in a population's DNA, right? So, we're looking at a change over time and change in the organisms themselves. And so we've got here D, an Arctic fox changes its color over time because it migrates to an area with a different climate. And so, again, it needs to be able to blend in with its environment. And so, the fact that it is able to change in accordance to where it's at is definitely helpful. And that could be a genetic variation there for sure. 40. Where do plants get the food they need for energy? They produce it during photosynthesis. And so, of course, we know what they need for that. They need sunlight, they need carbon dioxide, um, and of course, they need water to enable them to do those things. But they are producing this during photosynthesis. So 41, chlorine has 7 valence electrons. With what group of elements will chlorine most likely bond? And this is group 1 because remember, we said 8 is the magic number. Remember the octet rule. They always want to have 8 valence electrons. So since they have 7 already, they're going to look for that eighth electron, right? They're trying to look for one more to complete their set of 8. So if they already have 7, they're going to look for one more. And so they're going to look for one with just one. and that would be group 1. So that would be A. So 41 being A.